All right, Brutes. Well, it's time of the year is here. 16.1 is upon us. Dave Castro dropped the bomb last night, and people's minds were blown. I think heads probably exploded all over the place, right? Overhead walking lunges. Definitely not something that I expected, but I think it's great, and I think you were very prepared. And I would like to introduce Nick Fowler here to my right, one of the newer members to the Brute coaching staff. He's been with us for a few months now. And I will not even close to pretend to take the credit for all those lunges you guys have been doing. It's been all this guy. And so you guys ought to feel more than prepared for the demands that are going to be asked of you for 16.1 in order to do well, in order to make it through the workout. But there are a few things obviously that we want to address, and we want to make sure that you guys are well prepared for a great performance, and one that you're very proud of, and hopefully one that's going to send many, many, many of you guys to the next level, and that's obviously regional. So it's important how we kick off the Open each year. The first quarter seems to reflect a good bit of the outcome. But right now, Nick and I basically are going to go through a series of things that are going to address equipment, warm-up, workout strategy, and then some extra stuff on top of that. So with that, I'm going to hand it right over here to Nick, and he's going to talk to you guys a bit about some preparation things for today's workout.
Yeah, awesome, Adrian. Yeah, I feel lucky to have been a part of the past couple months. Definitely, 16.1 coming out. Kicks off a very, very long, 5 weeks. It's really hard to maintain and peak for 5 weeks, so just keep that in mind. We're gonna go through the workout in all these different facets, and so the first thing, really the biggest thing to consider one of them is going to be equipment, space, things like that. The demands of this workout is going to require a bigger space than we've typically seen, right? So think about how your box is set up, think about how your space is set up, and really the first thing you should think about is your lanes, right? Make sure they're clear, make sure they're level. Definitely, ideally, you want to be walking, right, towards a pull-up bar. If you have a 25-foot space, set it up to where you're walking towards a pull-up bar so you can actually transition really well. Adrian's going to talk a little bit about transition times, but that's going to be the key here. We've got a huge chunk of time, 20 minutes, right? And the little things are going to add up. So that being said, a couple other things. Basically, think about grips, gymnastic grips. If you get into 10 plus rounds, you're looking at 80 plus pull-ups. That's a lot of pull-ups, right? So if you're used to using grips, go ahead and keep using them. The other thing is wristbands. If you just think about just the sweaty mess that you're going to get into after 20 minutes, it'd be really good to mitigate some of that, sweaty palms, all that stuff. If you can avoid chalking up a dozen times, maybe that's going to buy you 30 seconds, right? 30 seconds, think about what you can do. So those little things will add up. It might be a good time to go get a pair if you don't have one, right? The other thing is knee sleeves. There's no reason not to wear them. A lot of walking lunges, it'll pad the impact of the knees in that. And the other thing is lifters, right? A big consideration here, a big limiter for some people is going to be overhead range of motion. So if you have limited dorsiflexion, ankle flexion, think about wearing lifters, right? And hopefully you have some light lifters that you've been using in Metcons and things like that. So if you're one of those folks, go ahead and use them. If range of motion isn't an issue for you, then they're just, basically, go to a nano or something light. So other than equipment, it's pretty basic, right? Yeah. Barbell and yourself. Yep. And so when you start thinking about warm up, I think about the demands of a 5K run, demands of a 5K row, and the pace and the tempo that you're going to get into, right? And so everyone has done either one of those, I hope, in their lifetime. So you can imagine what you're going to need to do to kind of ramp up. There's a couple considerations, right? One is going to be breathing, and we'll go more into limiters. But you can think about the demands of this workout is going to either tax muscle endurance, your range of motion, and just basically overall efficiency and work capacity. Or it's going to tax your aerobic capacity. So think about who you are and how you warm up specifically for those limiters. And what I mean by that is that if you're aerobically unfit, don't spend a ton of time warming up your aerobic system, because that is going to happen in the first couple rounds, right? If you're an aerobically fit person, definitely spend more time. So what we're going to talk about is just the kind of the median recommendation, and you got to kind of either scale it up or down based on who you are. So I would just say, you know, a good 10 minutes on an air assault, if you have one. You know, rowing, just something to kind of get yourself breathing. It should be at just a high, you know, start out at conversational rate. You can kind of increase that just above it. You don't want to redline it. You don't want to throw the hammer down for sure. Just enough to get the blood flowing, things like that. Come out of that, and this is where you should really be focusing on mobility, right? And we're going to actually put together a little piece that's going to be at the end of this. We're going to talk about the pieces and the way to increase efficiency by increasing some of that range of motion at the end. So basically we're looking at hip flexors, ankle mobility, and shoulders, right? So this is the time you get off, you know, you're breathing, you got that blood flowing, the wheels are greased. Spend 10, 15 minutes, you know, mobilizing a little bit. Then you're going to get back to breathing a little bit, right? In whatever fashion you want. Air assault's a great way. So think about kind of transitioning from an air assault for a minute or two and into the movement patterns that we're going to see in the workout. So some lunges. A really good idea is just some overhead waiter carries with a light dumbbell, just to start activating those small muscles for shoulder stability, things like that. Burpees, you can do a couple. Not a big concern there. I'm sure you guys have done plenty over the years, so definitely, you know, get kind of fired up. In terms of pull-ups, I honestly wouldn't waste any. You could maybe just do one just to check out the bar, make sure that the grip's set, you know, put your chalk width marks up there, whatever you need to do, but honestly at that point, I just wouldn't waste any. And really, coming out of that, you should have basically broken the seal, right? And I like that term that you use, right? So you don't want to get into this workout and be hit in the face by like, oh my God, like you want to get rid of that before you get into that. So think about breathing heavy, mobility, and just small muscle activation, if that makes sense. And you know, maybe do, I would recommend doing a practice lap with an empty barbell. Maybe just do a couple burpees just to make sure your setup, your timing, your distance is correct. And then, you know, maybe that's where you do your one pull-up, just to make sure that your layout, the distances are all kind of on par, if that makes sense. Yeah, and I think the warm-up here is going to be the key to getting you in a place where you're most efficient in the long run, right? And I know you're going to talk about how to kind of approach the 20 minutes and attack it. Yep. So, it's a long 20 minutes.
Yeah, it is. Guys, this workout's a long one. Obviously, it's a 20-minute AMRAP. We've got some gymnastics sprinkled in at the end of each lunge, but essentially, the majority of you guys are going to be limited by your sheer work capacity with this workout. Overhead stability is going to be a key role in this. Like Nick touched on, you really need to make sure, if this is at all possible, that you're lunging toward a pull-up bar for the latter part of that round. It's going to cut down tremendously on transition time. So looking at it from a setup standpoint, obviously you open up with the lunges, then we head to the burpees. Now it's key that looking at each athlete from an individual perspective, we need to find out what your limiters will be. So if you know that the overhead walking lunge is going to be a limitation for you because it's heavy, or because you're really terrible at overhead position, or you're just not good at unilateral work in general, that's where your focus needs to be in the workout. So potentially some of you athletes may need to break up reps, right? Those are the guys that we're looking at where 1 or 2 rounds into this thing, you do drop the bar on purpose. After you pass that third mark, take a couple breaths, get the bar back over your head, and finish the lunge. What we don't want each round to turn into, particularly the first 10 minutes, is where you guys are already like shaking through the middle and taking each lunge step, and it gets really slow and inaccurate, right? No reps is always going to be one of our first priorities. So prepare yourself for where your limiter may be. The next thing is that if pull-ups are going to be a limiter for you, make sure that you start the workout with the appropriate strategy. If I can hop up and do 8 unbroken chest to bar pull-ups, and it's neither going to affect my grip tremendously or affect the way that I can lunge with the bar, then that's okay. If I know that getting up there is going to tax me if I do 8 unbroken, maybe I need to consider just breaking them into 4 and 4. Obviously short rest between those 4s, but it's really not going to be very costly in regards to time, but can save me a ton of time under tension on my hands on the bar, just with 1 drop even each set, and then also save some muscle fatigue in my shoulders. And then even for some of our athletes out there, I'm going to strongly suggest that you guys find a relatively low bar and knock out 8 fast singles. Obviously, you need to go full extension of those arms, get a nice little light kip, get your chest to the bar, release the bar right at that point, drop down, reset, regrip, chest to the bar, drop down. Again, this is going to be one of the easiest ways to keep your heart rate regulated and allow you to focus on the other aspects of the workout and also maintaining a solid tempo throughout. When it comes to the burpees, make sure that you guys are just steady, right? Find some kind of steady pace and consistent way to get off the ground that can be repeated time and time and time again. So when you get to the burpees, it's going to be really natural for you guys to throw down that bar and just get them done really quickly, especially in the first round or 2. But just be mindful, obviously 20 minutes is a long window. Think about burping out of the bottom and actually stepping into the transition as you step towards the bar and jump over it. That's preferably one of the techniques that I like, and I know Tommy actually sent that via our doc sheet in order to suggest that to you guys as well. So out of the bottom of that burpee, as you're popping up, take a step towards the bar, then jump over it. Obviously, you still need to make sure you're jumping off both feet at the same time and landing on both at the same time. And then just from a generality standpoint, we want to make sure that you're really trying to do the best that you can to continue to move. So it's going to be easy for you to want to drop the bar and just stare at the pull-up rig, or seconds, or walk over and chalk your hands a few more times. Make sure that we're trying to cut down on as much of that access time as possible, because in a longer workout, specifically 20 minutes, it can really add up. So make sure that you guys are either having some kind of verbal conversation with yourself, have a friend, a coach, someone close in your parameters. Obviously, if we could be there, we would be there to be in your head and coach you guys through this workout. But the big thing is that you need to be saying, okay, to a pull-up. And whether it's 1 pull-up, whether it's 2 pull-ups, but if you start to get that work done and you're consistent in the way that you're attacking it, you allow yourself to continue to move. Do you have anything else to add there, strategy-wise, Nick?
No, I think you hit on a lot of good things, Adrian. I think the one thing is just be aware of your heart rate. You kind of mentioned it, but I think that's for a lot of you, that should be the indicator of pace, right?
Right.
Yeah, but I like it. Efficiency.
Cool. There are a few things that I didn't mention in regards to grip. When you guys pick up that bar for the overhead lunge, we're going to recommend that most of you try to establish the most narrow and stable grip overhead that you can that's going to be comfortable and sustainable, right? Some of you guys, that might not look as narrow as others. Some of you, it might be your clean and jerk grip. And some of you, it might be a hybrid grip between where you snatch and where you clean and jerk. But the goal is not too wide, because obviously that's going to give you more range to move through the shoulder joint, and then it can become unstable faster. And then another Tommy Hacksaw suggestion was that for those of us with longer arms that can, definitely try to find maybe a wider grip for your chest to bar pull-ups if it's something that's not completely out of your practice, right? So if it's today's game day and you're going to practice it for the first time, it's probably not the smartest thing. But if it's something that you've experimented with from time to time, anything that will shorten the range that you have to travel to get your chest to the bar would be a great idea.
So let's talk about limiters for a little bit. Adrian mentioned a little bit about them, but I want you to consider your own engine, right, and how you're built. And really, depending on how you're built and the individuality of each one of you, it's going to depend on where you can attack this workout, right? It's 20 minutes, and there's different demands based in this, right? If you know that mobility, overhead, or range of motion is a limiter, and that's going to be a challenge for you, take your time through those walking lunges, right? Obviously, we talked about warm-up. Make sure that you get as much mobility and efficiency out of that warm-up to prep, but take your time and slow down in those walking lunges, right? If you struggle with mobility, but you have a good aerobic engine, then the burpees, right, you can speed up, you can kind of gain some time there. Still have to keep heart rate under control the whole entire time. It's a long time. but you can see where you can kind of rev up and then where you need to back off, right? If you know that muscle endurance is a limiter, then think about the pull-ups, right? And think about how you're going to attack those. We're going to go over a style of singles here at the end. We'll combine that with the little bit of mobility piece as a suggestion that you could kind of try. But if muscle endurance is a challenge for you, you don't have the capability to go 20 minutes, then think about slowing down there, making sure that you don't get to your limit, right? As soon as you burn out, then you're done. Yep. And you don't want to get there. And then the other thing is if you have an aerobic limiter where you're just not aerobically fit, then slow down on those burpees, right? Be methodical, and then you can attack it on those overhead walking lunges, those pull-ups. You kind of get the idea, right? So think about how you're built, think about your engine, think about how to run it, and know when to kind of speed up and slow down. Be smart about it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Guys, another thing we want to cover in consideration with the videos of the workout is that it's important for you to video your workout. Yeah. Whether you guys are going to qualify for regionals or not, we want you to set up something so that you can have direct feedback, not only from your peers, but from a self-reviewed instance where you guys can look at this workout after it's finished and literally be able to dial back and dial in, like, where did you lose time? How much time did you take to chalk those hands? How much time did you take just staring at the bar? What were your rest periods like? What was your split like in the first 3 rounds of the workout and then the latter 3 rounds of the workout? And where can we help that start to become more of a meshed or a consistent output of power across the 20-minute window? It's really a big deal. Obviously with this workout, some of you guys might feel a bit decrepit after you finish it just a one time. It's long. You're going to get in a lot of overhead lunges. So you're going to be really sore. But considering from the repeat standpoint, we're probably going to look at something like a Friday night or Friday afternoon, Friday morning, attempt 1, and then literally waiting until Monday to do this. So we're really looking at, for many of you, the best shot at this, really just getting 2 solid runs in. And again, utilizing video and being able to see where you can make up for some of that lost time is going to credit you a lot more going into the second output or second round of that. The next thing that we're going to kind of address is going to be some just nutritional issues, some recovery aspects of the workout. And this might even help you guys set up yourself for success in looking forward to repeating the second time and get you ready so you can actually have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And recovery is going to be a huge part of it, right? And not necessarily for the performance part of it, and fueling and nutrition for the performance part of it. The work's kind of been done at this point, right? At this point, you can pretty much run off of hormones for the next couple 3 weeks. But as most of you know, 5 weeks is a long time, and to right, make sure that we don't get burned out emotionally, psychologically in week 4 or 5 when the nastiness starts coming out, and just being physically making sure that we're not getting injured, and then we can recover, right, and have fun. I think those are the benefits to looking at nutrition this time of year, right? So hopefully you guys have been looking at that stuff, addressing your nutrition, addressing your fueling, playing around with what works for you, what doesn't work for you. A couple recommendations that I have that works really well for me and for a lot of my athletes is eating a solid meal 2 to 3 hours before. I think you're going to want to eat a little bit sooner than that. On the 2-hour mark for this, it's a long workout, so you're going to need that extra fuel to kind of fuel that longer event. You don't want to go in with a big, brick of whatever, Thanksgiving dinner in your stomach, right? So think about 2 hours, just solid meal. At this point, I just wouldn't change anything, right? Don't try your buddy's new pre-workout, whatever. Like, whatever you've been doing, stick to it. It's not the time to kind of try new things. That being said, about 45 minutes before, you could think about getting about 0.4 grams of carbohydrates in per kilo. And that's just kind of a broad recommendation. You got to, again, look at who you are, your engine, if you're used to that. But the added carbohydrates just to fuel this longer event is really going to be beneficial to you. So think about half hour, 45 minutes, getting a little bit of carbohydrates in. You know, it can be, I don't know, there's just a million things out there, right? I'm not going to suggest anything because I don't want anybody trying anything new, but just, you know what you've been doing, so grab what you usually grab. That being said, some BCAAs prior to is a great choice. And then really the thing to think about is mentally set up so you're not having to go to get any water during the workout, right? There's really no need. You're not going to die. You're not going to get dehydrated. And so if you find yourself, you know, needing to grab that water bottle, it's more of a psychological kind of challenge at that point. So I think leading up, that's probably a pretty good strategy. I think coming out of the workout, especially when we're looking at repeats,
yeah,
I think that is where we can get a lot of bang for our buck, right? And so pretty much, and everybody should know this at this point, so maybe it's more of a reminder, but hey, get your post-workout sitting in the corner, ready to go. And so as soon as you get done, you know, as you're walking around the block, getting on the Airdyne, cooling down, don't just get done with this thing and go sit down and leave the gym, right? Cool down, right? Let that blood flow, get that blood going to clear metabolic waste, right? It's going to help with cellular repair. It's going to do just a bunch of things. So spend at least 10 minutes at a conversational rate, you know, spinning, walking, something just really easily. Just don't sit there in your pile of sweat, right? That being said, that's when you're going to be, you know, making sure that you get carbohydrates in, protein. Don't limit your fat, pretty much exclude your fat right after. And then within 90 minutes, you should be having a full meal, just what you normally do. And I think those two things will set you up tremendously for success in the repeats, to get back to training on Saturday. For a lot of us, this is the season, but for those who are hoping to advance to regionals, this is just a stepping stone, right? So make sure we're not digging a hole going into regionals or coming out of the open. So I think those are, you know, just a couple things to think about, some reminders, and yeah, I think that's perfect.
All right, guys, so check this out. This is like a good example. Jake just talked us through a little bit of a strategy that him and Tommy used last year in one of the workouts, where they literally just delegated themselves to singles, like from Jump Street, and did really, really well on these workouts. Notice it's a lot different than just standing on a low bar, because we've literally got plates here. So Jake can just stand up. Look at how bent his arms are, so how close his head is to the rig. And he's going to show you how he just kind of relaxes his arms, swings into the pull-up, and then knocks out a chest to bar. Drops himself right back to that plate, and then resets for the next rep. It can really save you guys some time. He showed us a few reps from a low standing position on a rig, and this is actually a bit more efficient and time saving. So definitely consider this if you guys know that chest to bar is going to be a limiting factor for you.
All right, so let's talk about some mobility, right? It's a pretty key point to spend some time, right, getting into positions of efficiency. It'll translate into increased performance. First thing we're going to talk about is a banded lat stretch. Open up the shoulders. It's going to be great for that overhead position. I like taking a band on a vertical post, just about, just kind of chest level. Some people like it up high. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm going to ask Adrian to get into this. He's going to basically wrap it around his wrist, grab. He's going to bring it behind his shoulder, right? And he's going to hang out there just for a couple seconds, kind of ease into it, right? And what we want to use is a PNF way of stretching, right? Proprioception neuromuscular facilitation. Don't ask me to spell it, but basically what that's saying is we want to contract and release, right? So what I'm going to ask Adrian to do is, once he's kind of eased into it, he should be feeling a good stretch here, opening up his shoulder capsule. It shouldn't be painful, it shouldn't be uncomfortable. And I'm just going to ask him to go ahead and flex everything he's got. So I'm going to ask him to flex his lats, right, his triceps, biceps, everything for 10 seconds, right? 10 seconds, right? 3, 2, 1. He's going to relax. Now as he relaxes, he's going to drive into a greater range of motion, okay? And I'm going to ask him to do that for 2 to 3 minutes each side, and that really should set you up for an improved overhead position. All right, so let's talk about ankle mobility, right? For some of you, that's going to be a challenge. If you have trouble squatting to depth, heels come up, this is a great thing. It's a great thing just to do in general. It's going to create a little bit more efficiency out of the lunges. So I'm going to ask Adrian, basically setting up a band down low, vertical post. He's going to go ahead and loop his foot through the band, and it's going to be just above the crease in which you, when you bend forward. So he's going to go ahead and walk it out to where there's some tension to start, and then really keeping the heel on the ground. I'm going to ask Adrian to take his knee and drive it forward, if that makes sense. Okay. Now this added distraction should help in there, and if he wants, he can kind of twist it in and out a little bit to kind of increase a little bit of the mobility aspect of it. And then he's going to stand back up, and he's going to walk out a little bit further, and he's going to repeat it, right? There's not a lot of P&F involved in this, just because it's more connective tissue related and less musculature involved. So really you're just kind of trying to warm up. You can really drive that knee forward and kind of get warmed up. So think about spending about 2 or 3 minutes in there. It'll improve your ability to kind of lunge forward, and some efficiency improvements for sure. So, all right, so let's talk about hip flexors, right? Lunging overhead, the ability to open up, be efficient, right? Stack that weight over your shoulders is going to be affected by your ability to kind of open your hip and drive through. So making sure that we have full range of motion there is going to be key. I like taking a bench. For those of you who are not very flexible in the hip flexors, you can do this on the ground just as easily. We're just going to show it on a bench. It definitely takes a little bit of tension off. You can actually drive into a better position for some of you. So I'm going to ask Adrian to take a knee here. Foot's going to come up here. Okay, and he's just going to kind of ease into it just like we normally do. Now we want to approach this in the same way that we did the lat stretch, right? P&F, 10 seconds contracting, 20 seconds relaxing for about 2 or 3 minutes. Once he's kind of eased into it, I'm going to actually try to get Adrian, right, and his shin vertical on the wall. So I'm going to ask, go ahead and take your knee and drive it back so this is flat on the wall. Yeah. So this is ideal if you can get into this position, right? And you notice how it's actually challenging his range of motion a little bit more. And so here, you can actually get a PVC, and you can actually push off to drive his chest up. So in this stretch, basically, yeah, driving the chest up will actually end up opening up that hip flexor. So here, it's going to be 10 seconds contracting, contract for 10 seconds as hard as you can, right? 3, 2, 1, he's going to relax, and as he relaxes, he's going to drive up into that greater range of motion, right? And again, 2 to 3 minutes is what we're looking for.